Well, good morning. Welcome to our latest Keeping Newport News Safe briefing. This morning we're going to review our February homicide as well as some pattern crimes, and we have some significant arrests to announce. Again, the purpose of our briefing today is to convey to our community a couple of things that we think are important for citizens to know. First, and we can't overstate this, the value of citizen participation in keeping Newport News safe. In several of the cases we're going to outline today, direct tips and information provided by community members resulted in the arrest of offenders, thus removing the continued threat of violence off of our streets. The second thing I think it's important for community members to know is that Newport News residents can rest assured that the full resources of the Newport News Police Department work around the clock to address violence as it arises, resulting in a rapid resolution towards the goal of removing dangerous people and dangerous weapons off of our streets. I continue to be impressed with the diligence and the outcomes of our police department members' efforts, and we want our community to share in this pride. Slide. In the first couple of slides, you're going to see a timeline of events that led to the successful capture of a Smithfield resident wanted in connection to a homicide that occurred February 10th. Officers responded to TJ's Tavern, located in the 7000 block of Huntington Avenue, at 12:42 a.m. for a report of a shooting. During the investigation, detectives obtained surveillance video and developed a possible suspect. On the same morning of the shooting, at 3:01 in the afternoon, the video of a person and vehicle of interest were released to the media and our social media sites. And over the next 2 days, we received substantial tips from crime line callers and other citizens. On February 11th, warrants were obtained for Mr. Williams, and on February 13th at 12:04 in the afternoon, we released a mugshot of Mr. Williams and information to the media. Again, later that day, additional citizen tips supplied the possible location of Mr. Williams, and that information was passed on to the U.S. Marshal Task Force in South Carolina. The next morning, February 14th at 7:45 a.m., Mr. Williams was taken into custody in North South Carolina. The name of the town is North, by the U.S. Marshal Task Force in South Carolina. Now, I will tell you, this was not an easy apprehension for the U.S. Marshal Task Force, and we are very grateful to them and to local sheriff offices who participated in that apprehension. 3 days later, Mr. Williams was brought back to Newport News to face 1 count of first-degree murder, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and 2 counts of attempted robbery. Detectives and our Public Information Office received several crime line and citizen tips from multiple sources. The information led detectives to start working leads, and when they followed up on them, their research led to an area in South Carolina. After warrants were obtained, the case was adopted as a Marshal Task Force case. Now, our department has detectives who not only work cases locally, but they are also deputized as Deputy U.S. Marshals participating in the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force. The Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force covers Virginia, Maryland, and the Washington, D.C. area. Once the case is adopted as a Marshal Task Force case, our task force detectives can contact the Marshal Task Force in any area of the country and ask them to help locate the fugitive. And they then follow up on the leads provided by our detectives. Having detectives on the Marshal Task Force multiplies our resources and allows us to have partners throughout the country that we can call on for assistance. This is a great force multiplier, and at a time when our resources are scarce, it is invaluable. All one has to do is look at the speed at which the offender in this matter was apprehended to understand the value of the Marshal's Fugitive Task Force. There are, as you know, 18,000 police departments in the U.S., and 600 of them participate in the Marshal Task Force program. And we are grateful and thankful that we can be a part of our local task force and continue to not only send cases to them, but assist them in apprehending fugitives when our local task force is deployed. It's a win-win all the way around. I'd like to get into pattern crimes now. Since January 31st, there have been 6 robberies and 4 attempted robberies throughout the peninsula, and 6 of those incidents have occurred in our city. Of the 6 in Newport News, 4 were attempted robberies and 2 were confirmed robberies. The Public Information Office has been working with detectives and previously released the videos such as the one you're watching here and still photos of some of the incidents. To recap, here are the incidents that have occurred in our city. February 1st, an attempted robbery at the Days Inn, 11,800 block of Fishing Point. February 4th, a robbery at the Jameson Inn located on Old Oyster Point Road. February 7th, a robbery at the Days Inn, previously mentioned 11,800 block of Fishing Point. February 9th, an attempted robbery at the Country Inn and Suites in the 1,000 block of J. Clyde Morris Boulevard. February 11th, an attempted robbery at the Comfort Inn in the 16,800 block of Warwick. And February 17th, an attempted robbery at the Best Western located on Operations Drive. Most of these incidents have occurred between 12:45 and 4:30 a.m. in the morning. In each of the incidents, the suspect is described as a white or light-skinned black male, 5'8" to 5'9", medium build with hazel or blue eyes. He typically wears dark clothing, gloves, and a shirt, scarf, or ski mask over his face, covering everything but his eyes. In each case, he has implied a weapon or brandishes a knife. Now, our detectives have been working around the clock and coordinating with other surrounding jurisdictions in an attempt to solve these incidents. And this morning, we have an exciting announcement to make regarding these cases. This morning at 4:46 a.m., our communications center received a call for a robbery at the Days Inn located in the 11,800 block of Fishing Point Drive. Officers were on scene within 30 seconds of the call, And at 4:54 a.m., 9 minutes after the robbery call came in, Central Precinct Patrol officers stopped the suspect vehicle at Turlington and Warwick Boulevard. 2 people have been detained and are currently in custody being questioned here at police headquarters. Now, it's too early to say if these people are the ones responsible for all of the hotel motel robberies, but given the similarities, we are vigorously investigating the potential link. I'd like to thank our detectives and officers who really literally have been working around the clock to catch the people responsible for these crimes. Situations such as this take a combined effort of the whole department, and I'm very proud of the work our officers are doing. I especially want to single out the robbery unit, and I see Captain Franklin from our investigative unit is here. You and your officers have just done an exceptional job on this. And I also want to call out the midnight shift of our Central Precinct Patrol. Both of these groups have displayed a high level of focus, dedication, and complete teamwork towards the mission of arresting these offenders. We hope to be able to release more information later today. Until then, I'm not going to be able to provide any additional details. This is a very dynamic situation. We literally are still interviewing these suspects, and so we can't release any more information that could potentially jeopardize the case. Continuing with another pattern crime, on February 12th at 7:28 p.m., officers were dispatched to the 7-Eleven located in the 700 block of J. Clyde Morris for a report of a man who stole a box of rolled pennies from underneath the register and fled on foot. At 8:14 that same evening, officers were dispatched to the Rite Aid located about a block up the road for a report of a robbery. The victim told officers a male entered the store and asked employees to exchange several rolls of coins for paper money. I think most of us would understand that's a clue that it could well be connected to the prior crime. When an employee opened the safe, the suspect took an undisclosed amount of cash from the employee's hand and left the store in an unknown direction. Now, detectives investigating both of these cases received a tip identifying the suspect as 23-year-old Michael Reuben Washburn of the 100 block of Dandy View Lane in Yorktown, and detectives obtained warrants for him 2 days later on February 14th. Slide. Michael Washburn, shown here, was taken into custody the next day, February 15th, in the 11,800 block of Jefferson, and he's been charged, as you can see, the charges on the slide, 2 counts of robbery, larceny, several counts of larceny, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, a couple of probation violations, and so on. We'd like to thank the citizens who provided tips to help us identify him as the suspect in this case. Yet another example, and time again we point out, when the community comes together with the police, we can bring a quick closure to these cases where people are preying on our community. Next slide. Finally, this morning we want to talk just briefly about our Violent Crime Reduction Task Force. In a previous briefing, we went over the results of our pilot program that ran from November 1st until the end of the year. We previously reported on the very positive outcomes and our conclusion that we need to continue to deploy such a unit. Monday of this week, the Violent Crimes Reduction Task Force resumed full-time operations, and in its new form consists of the following: 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, a K-9 officer, 5 detectives, and 5 officers. The mission of the Violent Crime Reduction Task Force is simple, and it's based on our overall current mission statement of the department, which is to reduce crime and the fear of crime, to enhance public safety and quality of life. In order to do that, the task force will incorporate mission objectives of our Organized Crime Division's Narcotics Enforcement Unit. Just like the Narcotics Enforcement Unit, the task force will apply direct and continual enforcement action to specific areas within the city that have been identified as having drug and violence problems. Now, these problems may be identified by crime analysis, citizen complaints, officer observation, or other intelligence sources. They'll be concentrating the majority of their efforts towards those activities related to violent crime, gangs, and guns. The task force will spend as much time as possible addressing street-level drug, gun, and violence problems, unless requested by another unit to assist with the investigation of violent crimes. The point is, we don't want these officers consistently getting tied up in major crime investigations that can drag out weeks and months and consume so many hours of their time. We want them on the street being enforcement focused. They will, on occasion, unite and function with the other divisions of our agency and support them during complex operations when a target or a subject of interest has been identified as a violent criminal offender or has a lengthy violent criminal history. And finally, community policing will be an integral part of the task force enforcement strategy. Personnel will focus on communications and information exchange on criminal activities throughout our agency, and task force personnel will regularly pass out business cards at scenes of searches, arrest locations, and crime scenes to solicit information and increase community awareness that the department is attacking violent crime issues. Now, oftentimes there's a misstated confusion that community policing is soft on crime. And I think the task force is a great example of an aggressive and assertive enforcement activity that's still grounded in the principles of community policing. And so probably in future briefings, we'll have the opportunity to talk about that. I'll close and bring it all back together around this theme, though, of community participation. The essence of community policing is developing a trusting partnership between the police and the community we serve. And on several of these cases we talked about today, where arrest of violent offenders came about swiftly, it was the direct result of members of the community who, by being good citizens, expressed that level of trust and partnership in the community by reaching out and providing helpful information that led to leads on suspects and ultimately an arrest. And we're going to keep coming in front of the community in briefings like this to talk about this, to reinforce that when the community partners with us, good things happen and we're truly able to keep Newport News safe.